Tara Brown and the Swinging London Colour Revolution by Vic Jenham. Chapter 12, Part 1. On the 11th of August, the Beatles flew to Chicago for what was to be their last concert tour as a four-man band. I was invited to join them by Paul, but didn't want to be away from London for the full 3 weeks of the trip. There were too many things happening. We were all very busy trying to keep London herself happening, which after the drugs busts and ensuing negative publicity suddenly didn't seem so easy anymore. Everybody was into Pet Sounds, the album that solidified the Beach Boys' worldwide reputation. Pet Sounds being as Californian as it gets, Los Angeles and San Francisco were starting to nibble at London's so far rock-solid reputation as the rich world's happening center. So I told Paul I would join later. In the end, I flew to New York on the evening of the 19th and made my way to Cincinnati the next day, where they were scheduled to play that evening. Due to dangerous summer storms, though, the concert was cancelled and would be held the next morning, after which our company flew to St. Louis for another concert that same evening. Again, it was raining heavily, and this time the organization were not going to postpone the gig. A makeshift tent out of plastic sheet and corrugated iron was placed over the stage, and there the Beatles went through their set reluctantly, afraid one of the many drops of rain seeping through might after all electrocute any of them. On the plane to New York immediately after, Paul confided that they were sick and tired of touring. "I've tried to keep it up, you know. It's what you do as a band. But this week has been horrendous. Bad weather, poorly organized gigs, low attendance, and the shit John got in the South for saying we're bigger than Jesus." "I never said bigger," interrupted John. "They just wanted to lynch us for my words. And I thought that's not fair. I need to protect my mates. It was me who said it, not them, you know. So I gave them some sweet on a stick, told them I was somehow sorry or something." "What else could you have done?" I interrupted. "At least you had them shaking in their hereditary seats." "Funny you should say so. You'd be surprised what else I'm known to have said." Lennon was in no mood to fight me, and I certainly didn't want any of that, so when I offered to laugh it off at some point, he grudgingly accepted. "You speak well, entitled one. We're all entitled in a way. It's your success that determines your position in the crowd. My success is in how I make my money work for me. I know plenty of youngsters with much more money than I'm entitled to dream of, but with hardly any presence in any scene whatsoever." It was easy enough for John to shoot a hole in my defense, but he backed off. He let me be. "And then all the traveling," Paul continued from where we had started to deviate. "We aren't exactly taking the shortest route. I mean, from Philadelphia to Canada, to the Midwest and back up to New York. It's all getting too much. John and George have been ready to give it up for a while now, you know, and I think I'm going to give in to them. This is going to be the last tour, at least for a long while. But hey, don't tell anyone, okay?" Of course not. I was famed for keeping mute about anything people told me all the time. I knew so much more than I was assumed to know. Then again, this was true for most of Swinging London's inner circles. Things were not quite what they seemed, and to various degrees our coterie were aware of what was going on behind the scenes. The next day, after a good sleep, I was cruising the surroundings of our hotel in Midtown while the Beatles were giving a press conference. They wouldn't be playing for 2 days, which gave me the chance to catch up with this big dirty city that had fascinated and repulsed me in equal measure during those wintry visits almost 6 years ago. I met a girl in a bar who looked like I could ask her about the Velvet Underground, and did so. "Have you heard of them?" Have I heard of the Velvet Underground? She repeated my question the American way. Man, I know where you can find them. In fact, they are playing tonight. Just a rehearsal gig, nothing fancy, but if you're up to it, we could check them out. I'd love to, I beamed. Brian told me to see them play. He met them last winter and said they were really cool. Brian, a friend of yours? Asked Teddy. Brian Jones, he's with the Stones. You mean the Rolling Stones? You know Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones? He's a good friend of mine. Our girlfriends get along swell as well. They often come round when he's in town. Man, said Teddy, I thought you were just some rich prick. I am, I laughed, but I do know the right people. Well then, Tara is it, no? Let's go and find them, said Teddy, who had the bluest eyes I had seen west of Ireland. I told her so, and she was convinced we were going to have a great time, and I naturally went with her. Influencer on tour. I needed to know what was going on in the Big Apple. I had already planned to check out some blues cats the following day, perhaps catch a Jimi James gig. The rumor going round he was the next big thing to hit the world stage. So seeing the Velvets tonight was going to make for a perfect visit. Despite Brian's encouragement, I had no idea what I was in for. Teddy took me to an old workplace the band sometimes used as a practice room, not far from Warhol's factory on East 47th Street. They were in between touring with the exploding Plastic Inevitable and wanted to try out some new ideas on a select public of friends. Nothing big, she said, just great music. But when we entered a long, narrow, dark space with an improvised bar in the corner, there must have been at least 200 people. Word travels fast in New York City, laughed Teddy. We were just in time to see the band enter a small stage, take up their instruments and start playing in a rather unconventional style. There was a rhythm section, for sure, formed by a bass player and a short woman who was standing behind her drums, producing a drone-like beat, then a violin player who seemed to be at war with the percussion, and a lead guitarist who also sang. I recognized his voice, which was at the same time sarcastic and warm, as if he was a sweeter person than he would like to be. It was Lou, the young lyricist I had met on the corner of Lexington and 125th Street during my best remembered previous visit. He was older, obviously, and gone was the rock quiff, but he still looked pretty much like I remembered him. Just to verify the information I'd got from Brian, I asked lovely hot Teddy in her ear, "Who's the singer?" And when she said Lou Reed, I knew for sure it was him. Lou Reed was Lou. "We've met," I remarked casually. "You did?" For the second time that evening, I showed her what money can do to your life. I guess seeing a local band rehearse was already a big thing for her. A long time ago, he told me he was writing songs for a small label and was looking to get his own band going. You know, I've met hundreds of guys making the same claim, so it's nice to see him coming through. Oh yeah, they're big already. They're touring with Warhol, man. Come on. Teddy started dancing and I concentrated on the music. It was weird, chaotic, emotional, dreary, languishing, aggressive, introvert, and menacing, and all of these things often simultaneously. But in its essence, it was rock and roll played at a double-paced melody over a meandering beat line. One song stood immediately out for me as Lou sang about a junkie who went up to Lexington 125 to score some dope. First thing you learn is that you always gotta wait. It precisely described the scene he had been observing that cold and rainy day when we met. I was captured by a sense of life coming full circle. It wasn't so much that I happened to be at the right place at the right time, rather that circumstance bent to accommodate my inevitable presence. Although I wasn't totally sure I liked this music, as it scared me as much as it allured me, I knew I had to talk about it with Sir John as soon as I got back. When the band took a short break, Teddy and I went up to the bar for drinks and some loose conversation. I quickly discerned an English voice amidst the various American accents, belonging to a tall man in his 40s with diminishing curly hair and a very British attitude. He was the type of man you could trust immediately so long as you accepted his old school morals. And I, as much as I loved surfing the waves of change, was born and bred with a sense of upper class decency that automatically attracted me to his manners. I walked up and introduced myself. I couldn't help hearing your voice over the noise. Tara Brown. Tara? I know you, he responded slightly suspiciously. I was at your house in Belgravia once at a party. I believe we were introduced. Ken Pitt. We shook hands, not quite sure this chance encounter was what either of us needed. Ken, I beg your pardon. I may not have been fully on top of things that evening. It was a strange admission to make for me, yet Ken seemed to pull it out of me with no effort. Nevertheless, it got us talking, and when I learned Ken was a record producer, I asked who he was working with at the moment. Oh, a variety of artists, he said. I've been in this business for a while. Any hot prospects the world should know about? His ever so British frown at my choice of words made me add, I am the world. It is my job to spot trends and bring people together. That's why so many artists like hanging out with me. I am just a socialite and not half as rich as many seem to believe I am. Pitt smiled for the first time. That's an honest admission, young man. I must say your reputation has got ahead of you, and not always in favourable ways. Isn't that what London is all about these days? I said light-heartedly. Have I told you what a sweet, well-mannered guy Brian Jones really is? Now Ken Pitt was laughing fully. You're a funny kid, Tara. And you're right, I shouldn't judge you by other people's opinions. To answer your question, have you heard of David Bowie? He has a single out called Can't Help Thinking About Me. I've been asked to work with him on an upcoming album. Ken started humming the melody, and I said, Yes, I've heard that one a few times on the radio. Nice little song, but I don't know who he is. He used to be called Jones, Davy Jones. He changed his name to David Bowie recently to be recognizable. You may have heard of his TV appearance 2 years ago with his Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Long-Haired Men. He told me about it. He was only 17 at the time, and it must have been quite hilarious. It was a gimmick merely, just to get his ass on TV. I heard about it, I answered. Never saw it. But I know Davy. We met a few times at parties. Nice kid. Seems very talented. I kept it superficially, as I couldn't tell Ken that Davy was primed to be one of the possible stars of the next decade, when the whole Beatles thing was supposed to be over. With the Beatles ready to give up touring, it suddenly felt as if the seeds for the 1970s were already being sown. This Velvet Underground band, with their unhappy music, a kid in London working on his act. Of course, they were just two sparkles of light at a firmament of millions of stars trying to shine brightest, yet it made sense to seek a connection here. Do you know the band? I asked Pitt. I've met the guitarist before. I could introduce you to him. Your David might be interested in their music. That would be splendid, Ken said. First, it was time to return to the music. The band had started playing again, and Teddy and I moved up closer to the stage, with Ken Pitt preferring to stay at the back. Teddy, who had been silent during our conversation, pinched my arm. You English are weird, she said. How can you need so many words to say so little? I laughed and danced with her. Now that the plan was set, I could enjoy myself and wait for things to play out. After a long set in which most songs from before the break were repeated in a different arrangement, the band at some point just gave up, put their instruments away, and sat down on the stage floor. People quickly moved in, offering drinks and cigarettes, and all types of conversation ensued. I waited a while for things to calm down a bit and then walked up to Reed with Ken Pitt by my side. Lou Reed, do you remember me? I knew it was you when I heard you sing about Lexington Avenue. We met there on a winter day. You told me about junkie behavior, and then we had tea in a Mexican bar nearby. Reed looked at me suspiciously, not sure whether I was pulling his leg or simply uninteresting. And when was this supposed to have happened? He asked, blowing a large cloud of cigarette smoke in my face. Many years ago, I answered unfazed. You still had rock and roll hair. The name is Tara, the Irish kid. That seemed to ring a bell. Reed relaxed and said, Oh yeah, I remember. You were funny, such a baby face, but quite worldly. What brings you here? I'm with the Beatles. They are in town and I thought I'd check out the music scene. The Beatles? Reed said with disgust. They're terrible. Everybody loves them. That just proves my point. Some cats listening in started laughing, and I knew I had to move quickly because I was losing him. Anyway, that's not why I came up to you. I want you to meet Ken Pitt. He's a record producer from London, and he really likes what you are doing. That didn't cut it, though. When Reed saw the distinctly uncool-looking Pitt, he simply turned his eyes away and began talking to somebody on his side. I felt embarrassed for Ken and wanted to get out, but the violinist stepped in to save the situation. John Cale, he said in a thick Welsh accent. I've heard about you, Ken. Somebody mentioned your name to me once. I didn't know you were into our kind of music. It was time for me to step back. Let Ken and John work it out. I turned to Teddy and asked her what else was going on in town. I still had to find Jimi James tomorrow. After some unclear excuses, I asked for Jimi directly. I don't know, she said, but we've got a name, that's something. She dug up a music guide and found out they were at the Café Wa. I know where that is, said Teddy. They always have good music. Haven't been there for a while, though. Can't wait. After a wonderful day in New York with Teddy, who didn't seem too busy, we descended on the West Village where Café Wa had Jimi James and the Blue Flames built. Never heard of, said Teddy, but the name sounds good. And so they did. Jimi James was an amazing performer who held his guitar upside down to play it left-handed with astonishing skill, adapting his voice to the style and topic of his mostly Southern blues cover songs. It was fast and it was rough, and the band were incredibly tight. I learned from someone who wanted to talk to me that James was coming to London soon, that Chess Chandler, the former bass player of the Animals, was interested in him. Really? I said. I wasn't informed about this. You saying? Nothing. It's good news, I guess. If you're from London, sure. He looked at me expectantly. I'm from Brooklyn. Jimmy's been in town for only some months now. His background is touring with frontmen, Curtis Knight for one, all over the South. And now you're already taking him away. I don't know what to say, I said. You are making me responsible for a rumor I was totally unaware of until you told me. The man who wanted to talk to me pressed a finger against my chest. Yeah, but you're the kid. What's your name? Who knows everybody? You're in the thick of things. I was honestly surprised anybody should know. Yes, it's me, I confessed, light-heartedly as ever. Who told you so? I heard someone talk about you. And what did they say? I don't know. That you're somehow involved in many decisions? It was hard to keep avoiding his gaze after this point. I looked into an almost 30-year-old face with an inbuilt weakness, as if he was never going to believe himself. His hair was thick and blonde, and he wasn't so skinny as most. That's funny, I said breezily. My image is outshining me. I'm usually there where things happen, that's true, but I'm not decisive in their outcomes. Well, that was the story, said the man who wished to speak with me, that you were more than you pretended to be. So what was I? James Bond? A record producer? He looked at me innocently, somewhat falsely, as if he needed someone rescuing him. Nobody seems to know, he sighed. That's the point. It was the phrase that triggered my meaner self. Indeed, that is the point. You're asking me to verify your story, but I can't because I'm not in it. The man who needed to hear from me visibly shrank under those words. I'd hoped you'd be more comforting. Excuse me? I love you. Say what? I love you. I want to be with you. He looked the part with his interpretation of the following scene. You don't know me, I stated the obvious. How can you love me? I was looking around for support, but everybody seemed busy, even Teddy. I have your photo. I've been following you for some time now. I thought you hardly knew me. I was lying. He giggled and touched my arm. Do you mind? I guess I do. Are you saying you're a fan of mine? Yes, of course, he beamed. You are fantastic. He smiled at me as if we'd just left the church, and I started wondering how I was going to save myself without offending dear Mr. Fan here. So when you say you love me, you mean you love my work? I redirected conversation. Which is you, he concluded. Your work is you. This is why I also love you as a man. I'm not sure I can help you there, I held my fort. I'm kind of a ladies' man, see? Oh, but I can quietly admire you if you prefer. He looked at me like a dog, a lean, muscled dog. A high dog he was as well. Whatever you wish, dear, I threw in, but tell me one more time, what's your name again? Biff. How do you get your information on me, Biff? What are your channels? He shook his ass and brought his hands together. I work in the documentation department of a large newspaper. I see stories and photos of you come by every couple of weeks. Cool. Do I have a fan club? Biff was reaching the end of his act. I don't know. I don't think so. You don't think so? Well, it could be, he hailed exhaustedly. Why don't you find out? And if you find one, you may contact me. In the meantime, I turn back to the lady I have chosen to accompany tonight. Have a good one, Biff.